So let's go over the materials. First up, we have our 10-ounce coffee can, and for the computing, I went with the Raspberry Pi 5. Of course, you can choose any single board computer probably. I went with the Raspberry Pi 5 instead of the Orange Pi 5 because the Raspberry Pi 5 is a little bit smaller, and this thing is a lot smaller than you think on the inside when you start pushing components inside. It starts getting real cramped real fast. For the controllers, I have these two USB SNES style controllers that I've had laying around for a while. These controllers work great for most single board computers. They're pretty much plug and play. And for attaching everything via USB, I had to get a little creative. I had to use a 90-degree angle adapter so that I could save some space because the Raspberry Pi 5 comes to about here, and there's not a lot of room to plug things in because the USBs are facing upward. So if you stuffed a USB in there just straight up, it would be sticking out the top. There would be no way to close the top. And that also leaves a little bit of room in case I wanted to add anything else. Keyboard, I can always just pop that in, connect it to the USB hub in there. So some of the more miscellaneous materials that I use are these little magnet strips here. I have a long strip of magnet that I use for various projects. They come in handy a lot more than you think. The magnet strip has adhesive on the back, so I just cut off a bunch of pieces here and kind of made a little magnet wall here, stuck it to the side, so that in theory, this is still kind of work in progress. I can kind of store them this way by connecting them to the aluminum case. For kind of carving out these little areas, like the holes in here. So I used a power drill that had bits that were designed to cut through metal. So I would kind of get my guidelines there with the drill holes, and then I would do the rest with metal cutters. And I cut my holes in there. I added this little protective film just to kind of protect my hands. I did file down. I got some metal files as well, and I filed down the edges, but I wanted to make sure, I didn't cut myself. So I added a little bit of extra protection there, as well as dust protection, because there's a lot of pollen out and this thing's going to be outside. So I'm trying to protect it from the pollen as much as possible. So this vertical hole I cut here is for the I/O of the Raspberry Pi 5. I've got access to both of the HDMI ports here as well as the power port, and it's connected by this zip tie here. I tried to come up with a couple of different ways to mount the Raspberry Pi 5 inside of here, but with the curved nature of the coffee can, it became more and more annoying trying to mount it to different parts of the coffee can just because it was so round. So I just said, last resort, I'll just zip tie it. And for the bottom, I found these little rubber feet. I don't know what they went to, but apparently I didn't use them. And before, this was just sitting flat and wasn't really doing much intake. So I got these feet to kind of give me a little bit, like a 1/4 inch, not even a 1/4 inch offset, so that it can pull some of that fresh air from outside. I shouldn't have many overheating issues. The Raspberry Pi 5 runs pretty chill from what I experienced. So we'll see how it holds up outside in the elements inside the coffee can. Now, as far as the software build that's on the Raspberry Pi 5, I can't go into too much detail, and you probably know why, but it is a Batocera build, and it's a 256 gig image full of games that's on this thing, so it has a ton of games on it. And I'm gonna just leave it at that. I don't want any trouble with the ops. I don't want to end up on a t-shirt. So we've gone over the hardware in the build process. We've gone over what software is on it. Let's hook it up and play some games. The idea is pretty silly. I get it. Anybody could probably do this. It's not anything super special. I just jammed some computer components inside a coffee can. Now, if you are looking at this like, man, this doesn't look simple at all, I'd really like to know more about how to build things like this. I did make a video on getting into single board computers. I'll put that up here.